Welcome to Common Off the Shelf, a podcast for the modern Contra and preppers. We discuss items, books, and topics from a common man's perspective, and our opinions are our own. Do not take any of these as hard facts, only as our interpretation and understanding in a flawed world of amazing products, price gouging, and cheap crap. Your results may vary, and your needs may differ depending on where you live and what you know. So don't take this as a blanket endorsement for all people in every situation. Just like camouflage, your abilities and needs will vary. This is a conversation about hypotheticals and fiction with these items, and never is an endorsement of the owner, author, or any actions. Lastly, we are just common men and not experts in the fields. If we get it wrong, great, tell us. If there is something better, let us know. I can't believe I had to say this, but some of you window lickers made this necessary. Welcome everybody to another Common Off the Shelf, and we have a special one for you guys today. I have Rabbit on tonight, I have Mando on tonight, but I also have an individual who brought this whole thing together and said, go and do it, man, and that would be Patriot Man.
Howdy, everyone. I'm glad to be on here, and I'm glad to see the success that this podcast has been having already. I'm very happy that y'all took it and ran with it, because I think it's a very important outlet and a very important piece for people who are new to the preparedness game and need a wide variety of perspectives. And I think that this is exactly what they need. So I am tickled pink to be on right now.
And he actually gave us the idea for tonight. We're going to be discussing how we got into prepping a little bit and how we got other people into prepping tonight. But first, Mando, go ahead. I'll have you go first.
Folks, welcome back from the wintry north.
Rabbit.
How you guys doing? Appreciate it. It's good to be here.
All right, I'm going to start off. I think Patriot Man's probably got the best story that I've heard around, and he's a little later to the game on prepping than some of us. So, Patriot Man, tell us how you got into the whole prepping community and vicariously kind of moved in what I'd call the partisan side of things as well.
Yeah, sure. So I was home from college. This would have been about circa 2011, summer of 2011, sorry, summer of 2012. And I was in Costco actually with my parents. And, they have those lovely gigantic tables with all the books that I could spend about $3,000 on and probably only read half of them, but they just all seem really good. And there was a book sitting there by a guy whose name is James Wesley Rawls, and he wrote a book called How to Survive the End of the World as We Know It. And that caught my eye, and I've always been, I was an Eagle Scout and everything, so I was into, survival stuff, but not really like thinking about it from a preparedness standpoint for what the future held. I was a dumb college kid, like, oh, all I'm worried about is when the next party is, right? So bought the book, and I got through the first chapter, and I was like, whoa, this all makes an insane amount of sense. And so really just read the book cover to cover 2 or 3 times in a row. And then I guess it was convenient that shortly after that, I was in my last semester at college when Hurricane Sandy hit. And so here I am seeing this massive storm coming, and I'm like, wait a second, I know how to prepare for this. So I ran out, I got the things I needed, I got, the food, I got the water, I got, at that point, my first radio I'd purchased a Sony 7600 GR shortwave. And the storm hits, and I'm working a hurricane evacuation center I was a professional staff for the rec center in my last semester, and I was helping a staff at an emergency shelter, and power goes out. Oh, no worries. I have a radio. We can hear what's going on. And just as the night went on and as different things were happening, I was pulling out of my bag of tricks all the stuff I had just learned from reading this book. And it was super exhausting 2 days. I remember I had to spend the night at a friend's house before driving home the next day. And I fell asleep in the middle of the floor, in the middle of a loud party, because I was just exhausted. But it showed me that, hey, this preparedness stuff, there's something to it. And that was really the impetus to continue on with it. And here we are now, going on 13 years later, and just trying to improve a little bit every day.
Yeah, that's awesome. And having that experience, I know some other people have had that experience as well. Mando, I'm going to go for you next because I know Rabbit's story and he's got a good one too.
Well, I got into this because it's cold up here. I mean, there's not much more to say about it. You think about the weather and the electricity going out, and you can't keep yourself warm. You're gonna freeze to death. I've gotten stuck in snowbanks. I was in the National
I feel
Guard,
like that's one of the
and we got
one of the
called up for
environments
major
where people are
snowstorms,
preppers, even if
like
they don't
like we talked
think
about
they're
on the last
preppers.
one. Yeah, and so you got pulling other people out of snowbanks, and so it's always been since I was in the service. It's been something I was worried about because I could get called up for that stuff anytime, and I'm so glad I do because I was thinking about it today. It's minus 23 here with the wind chill, and if I haven't had to turn my furnace on now for 2 or 3 weeks, except for very briefly because I've got a wood stove. You think about what's going to happen. Like when I got sick a couple of years ago, I couldn't stack wood. So you stack wood for the future and you stack food for the future because during COVID, yeah, had a hard time with finances and stuff like that. I had extra food and it saved my butt. I had extra dog food. Dog food wasn't available at one point because everybody's losing their freaking mind. I had extra dog food, so good to go. So you think about the storms and think about getting stuck on the side of the highway and freezing to death. It opens your perspective up a little bit.
That's something I love. The prepper community stems everywhere from natural disaster to blue hat UN guys coming in, which I think has less of a chance than EMPs, but that's another story. And I think we should accept a lot of these people coming in and going, okay, maybe you've got a crazy idea of why you're prepping, but it still gets you into it. And I think a lot of us normalize out of it. I know Chris Weatherman, who wrote the book Going Home, he's concerned about EMPs, but I think he's substantially less worried about EMPs than he is politics. I could be wrong, but just talking to him. Rabbit, how did you get into all this?
It's kind of out of nowhere because I joined the military, um, 2012. Um, after I think I ended up running into you after we became friends. I know I shipped out, came back in 2016, and to be honest, I was too. I don't know if you want to just call like just an innocent kid, whatever. And I remember leaving the military and seeing. I remember being constantly let down when things went bad, even in the military. You're used to not having what you need, and the poor excuse of, oh well, we just you just don't use it, or oh, you didn't pack this. And obviously my background has always been in medical. That's pretty much all I've ever been. I was a medic there, and then I got adopted as a changed over to a flight medic before I left. And just kind of seeing, I guess it kind of impacted me as to seeing how the government kind of, obviously we're the military, and preparedness is kind of, and the what if is my entire job. What if you got hurt? What if this happened? And trying to think of things and being proactive instead of reactive kind of grew on me over the years. And then when I finally left the military in 16, Matthew hit, and he had no communications. People weren't allowed in for almost a week. I think the total was like 13 or 14 days. No, yeah, I think it was like 13 days when we finally was able to get freelance into like where it was. And at the time I was working out there, so but it constantly was a letdown as to, oh hey, like, even my family was like, oh no, just sit down, things will be good, just relax. We had stuff at the house and we didn't suffer, but there was, like I said, there was no communication, no modern amenities in that aspect. Um, power's out, so no air conditioning, which everybody in the South knows it's almost standard issue down there. And, living that uncomfortable and saying, oh, hey, oh, well, somebody's going to be here to take care of it. Well, that someone never showed up. Like 2 weeks down, and it wasn't, and it was created an eye opening experience for me because we you expect it, and then when it doesn't show up, you're like, oh hey, like thanks for letting me down. Well, how do I not have this happen again? And at the time, I'm single, no family, like you were talking about, man. Like I had no dog, nobody else really to worry about me. And actually, I think you were trying to avoid they had created check block. They like screwed up their checkpoints and ended up getting stuck. I
Flooding
think
my
you
car out trying to
yeah,
get
you ended up
back.
yeah, it ended up flooding out. We had to go down and get you. I think, yeah, we drove you back to your house, and I remember that being crazy.
I was over at my
Um,
family's house. I
yeah, the
left a
cops
check.
pulled us over.
I left a check on my house, and then I was coming back to check on my mother, and they had put up all the roadblocks. I knew the ways around. I just happened to follow somebody the wrong direction in the middle of the night. Roads were flooded, and I flooded my car out. So that was less than entertaining. Um, I guess on my side of things,
Yeah,
I started off with my parents were firefighters, and we lived in Nebraska and Colorado, and snowstorms and things like that happen. Which I think a lot of people in the north in the snow experience more regular disasters than a lot of other people in the south. The south has its disasters. We have the hurricanes. Arkansas has its tornadoes and stuff like that, but you get snowed in. The power was out for 2 weeks when I was a kid, and I don't remember it, but it was a big thing. They made T-shirts back then. And then we moved to the coast and we had hurricanes and stuff like that. My father was always prepping. I think the big shift from let me just be a prepper to more what if I have to be a partisan really came after I went to Scouts RTO class. And that said, I think there's a balance to it because you don't want to be a crazy nutball who's like, the UN's coming for me, the feds, blah, blah, blah. But again, you start going from, okay, I got water, I got food, I've got shelter, I've got a couple other amenities to onto the more advanced things, the radios and stuff like that. And there's a balance, but I think a lot of the prepping industry starts out saying, buy all this stuff. And I don't know if it was you, Patriot Man, or somebody else. I think it was you who specifically said start off getting a little bit of everything as you go. And I think you got some stuff for Sandy or whatever rice. Is that correct?
Yeah,
Maybe you can
correct.
tell us about that.
Yeah, and Sandy created a wonderful opportunity for a cover for action if you wanted to do some, you really wanted to get into the prepping game because for years afterwards in my area, no one would bat an eye if you went in and bought 300 pounds of rice because you just said, hey, Sandy, man. And they're like, yeah, I totally get it. Like, I remember distinctly going into Home Depot and buying 25 food grade 5 gallon buckets. And I needed to call someone over to get them off the top shelf. And the person was like, what do you need all these buckets for? And I was like, oh, I'm just storing a little bit of food because, Sandy. And he's like, oh, I totally get that, man. He's like, I started stocking up on food too. So it was a great cover for action. And so the first purchase I went with food wise, because my logic was I just want to get calories at this point, was white rice. So I ended up buying 350 pounds of white rice from Costco. And I had the Mylar bags and the buckets, and I have them still. We just broke open a bucket, I don't know, 2 months ago. It's perfectly fine, perfectly sealed, and so that's going on, 13-year-old rice. That was just simply oxygen absorbers, Mylar bags, and a 5 gallon food grade bucket. And so since then, I got more strategic in what I bought because in the beginning you're so overwhelmed, and I think a lot of people experience this, particularly if they hear a podcast or they read like the Guerrilla's Guide to the Battlefield Radio. They tend to get overwhelmed and being like, I need all this stuff. And I think the key thing is you just don't want to go out and run and buy things. Like my first set of combat, like, the chest rig and everything, it's jet black. Why? I don't know. I thought this is what I was supposed to do until I realized I was an idiot. So, I think all of us have those tubs and tubs of what we call the dead gear boxes of stuff that we bought because we thought we needed it. And it turns out, no, you don't actually need it. And so I think that was something that happened to me early on until I sat down and really said, okay, I got to plan this out. what is my priority, what is, break everything into like your priority, your this is really a necessity, this is just something to be nice to have. And I think that that's something, if you're getting into prepping, you need to do early on, because you'll save yourself time, money, and aggravation, as I assume that we've all had those experiences.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, and I think there's some really good books out there. Clay Martin makes some really good books on that. I know Chris Weatherman slash A American. If you're looking for his stuff, he's got a book on the subject too. And there are others. I got I think a guy named Spike off of X. I got his book. Yep, Spike's guides, and they all have the same basic stuff, but we all make mistakes, and that's part of the reason why we're doing Common Off the Shelf, is to make sure guys listen to stuff. Again, we're not going to get everything right. When I started off, I started kind of my prepping world in stuff in the late 90s, and all the gear was a copy of what some of the Rangers had carried probably a decade before, and it was black gear. And we went out and did other stupid stuff. I like to rappel in places, sometimes off of abandoned buildings and things like that. And we quickly realized, wow, we look stupid, and we look like obviously we're doing something wrong. And nowadays, mill surplus is still available all over the place, and there's good products, but sometimes you stick out. So this is something that I like to talk to new people about. Do your area study, and I know Scout has preached this over and over, especially on the radio stuff. Know your patterns of life. If you're out where the G camp is, wearing mossy oak or wearing camo isn't that shocking to anyone. But if you go into, say, Charlotte, North Carolina, or somewhere in the major city of Virginia, you start sticking out. And there is a pattern that you need to look at before you ever buy anything, especially tactical gear. Think about where the hell you are. Mando, is there anything that you bought back in the day and you're just like, wow, this is dumb, or I shouldn't have gotten as much of this as I have?
Yeah, of course. I mean, I've got belts. I actually been going through stuff lately. I got belts that are like, well, why do I still have this in a bin? I've got gun parts, don't make sense anymore. I actually literally I don't bother trying to sell some of it. If it's kind of like mid tier, low tier, I just chuck it. It's not worth having. Some it's I call it soft stuff. So I'll tell you the one that I remember the most specifically was when after 2008, with the financial crisis, I started researching the dollar and problems with the dollar, and that's a whole rabbit hole we could go down. But the thing that I started to do was get into the prepping community on the gun side too, and I was shooting some competition stuff. But I bought some of those cheap mag pouches, Molly with the lanyard on top or the bungee thing on top, and I like hooked them all up to my kit, and I'm like, yeah, this is great, and I couldn't get the mags back in. They're just trash. They're useless. So I've got still got two or three of those. That's like why. But what I found that those can be useful for is I use them as like a placard or like a to go in a bag. So I'll just put extra mags in them and they go in a backpack or, a box, something like that. So yeah, of course. I mean, I have a nylon box of stuff. All the nylon, quote unquote, mag pouches, belts, stuff like that goes in. And, I have like 5 belts. It's like, why? It's time to get rid of some of this junk.
Yeah, I've had stuff over time that I've passed on to other people as well, just because I'm like, hey, this isn't what I want, but here's a starting point as well. So sometimes some of this extra supplies works to helping your community and new people coming in. I know one thing that'll probably never help the community is that green vest, zip up vest that was a concealed carry vest that I bought right when I was getting into guns in like 2000 something, and all the online gun guys wore. And now I look back, I'm like, that is the most FUD, obvious I'm carrying a gun thing I've ever seen. Rabbit, you want to chime in on something you got that you're like, I'm an idiot?
Oh, dude, that's I don't need any extra help on that. But I love Patriot Man. You said it the best. A dead gearbox is 100%. I got like two of them, and
Yeah.
it's a mix of just gun parts, things that I thought was tactical but isn't practical as that. Like it isn't worth anything, and I was a geardo. Loved. I was like, oh man, that's cool. Like, does it work? Cool. You try it out, but kind of like I said, like in the military. Yeah, in a ruck or whatever, that's easy. But when you're actually moving and utilizing your gear, the amount that you just shred off, and you're like, oh yeah, like I had the black gear, I got the cool ATAX gear thing that I got years ago that kind of works, and then I ended up just going with like some of that Russian pajamas, that they were running, and like an LBE or something. And I'm still kind of trying to taper back to. I'm currently doing that right now. I'm not 100% like what I'm running right now, and I have a feeling that it's going to end up kind of tapering out just because spend so much money on stuff that we just so cool at the time, so awesome, and you look at it and you're like, I can't believe I was that dumb. Like I can't believe I fell for that.
And I think you bring up a good point that I think this is one of the benefits of going to, whether it's Scouts training class or another training class, Dolio. If you don't know or have the gear, I would recommend going to one of these classes, because I don't think I've ever seen anyone not just be so willing to explain to someone who's new, who doesn't know what they want, or doesn't have, say, a chest rig yet. Oh, here's what I run. Here's why I run it. Hey, do you want to wear it? I know that when I am at training classes, I bring 2 or 3 extra chest rigs. I let students run my rig, my radios, my guns, just because it's like I'd rather you, like, you might see all of us wear this split front chest rig and think that's what I need to get, but you run it yourself and realize you don't like it. Well, then why would you spend the money on that split front chest rig if you realize that you don't like it once you wear it in the field? And maybe instead someone else has a plate carrier and you find that that's better for you. Well, then what's the point? Like, we don't want you to waste money. We're all, right, in this current economy, we're all not trying to waste money. So I think that's a really important thing. If you are getting into radio, you're getting into this, and you're going to a class and you feel like you need to show up with a ton of stuff and you don't really know what to buy, but you're just going to buy it. I would caution and say you really don't have to, because between everyone there's going to be enough people with gear that you'll be able to try yourself, and then you might come out of that. I know that several people, when they ran my split front, they said, okay, I want my split front exactly the way yours is. Can you basically draw me a picture of how you have it configured? And they would take photos of it, and I'd write down, here's this and here's why, and then that worked for them. Other people said, nah, I don't like it the way it sits on my upper body, so I'm instead going to go for a belt. And so I think instead of wasting money, try other people's gear and just ask questions, because people are more than happy to explain why they have something a certain way.
Yeah, I think that's a great
Yeah.
point. And I literally have a split rig from Wendigo Works because I think you came in with one from UA, the guy in Florida that makes them, and his backlog is so ridiculous. I couldn't get what I wanted, and I ended up getting a Wendigo Works and building my own with old pouches from, I'd say, right at the start of GWAT, and phenomenal setup for me. Love it completely. But again, I'm in the South right now, and if you go other places, if I lived in urban areas all the time, I do have a plate carrier, I do have plates. But if you live in an urban environment, you may want plates, not because the split rig isn't comfortable, or maybe you want to put a smooth plates and then have a chest rig if you're on the edge of woods and that. And other things like the Russian belt system, which is basically an upgraded Vietnam style belt system. Rabbit and I have it, and I love that thing. It's great for hiking. We'd throw lickies and chewies in it, not magazines. We'd go hike with it, and it's phenomenal. It has a little butt pouch. You put your stuff in there, you put rain gear, and you have your prepping stuff with you, and it's phenomenal. You'll never know it until you go out there, and Patriot Man's completely correct. If you go out there, I borrowed his gun because I had AKs, couldn't do blanks at the time. I went out there, and that started me on the whole roll with American Partisan, writing for them, is because of Patriot Man. Yeah, oh yeah, I got this, blah blah blah. And if you are going to a class, get on X, talk to these people who've gone to classes before. They may know somebody who's going who can get you something to loan you. If you know where the forums are, forums.brushbeater, you can pop on there and say, hey, I'm coming to the class for brushbeater. Dolio usually has a little extra gear. Everybody has a little extra gear. Not always, because sometimes they travel and they can't carry it. But I bet you somebody there has a little extra. If you try to bring what you need, other people will supplant what you need to make your life better.
Man, I'll tell you what. When I went to Matt's class last year, brush feeder, I had so much crap with me. Like I had guns to give to people, I had extra gear, I had paint. I mean, I had everything. So it's a great place to do that. I'm going to second that. Kind of circle back a little bit to the prepping stuff. I wanted to touch on something here. There's something to be said about doing your preps, but having what P-Man was talking about as a cover for action and being a little bit more low key about it. So one thing that I have had to consider now, I've been driving once a week, three to 4 hours a week, and I've been constantly trying to figure out how do I take what I need with me. And I don't want to walk home 200 plus miles, but what if I did? What if EMP did happen? And that was, what's the book? 1 second after, is that it? Where the EMP hits and all
Yep,
those people are messed up?
that's one of them, and going
Oh
home
yeah,
is
yep.
another EMP one.
What was the other one where the guy, part of Rawls's set, where he gets like trapped in Afghanistan and has to like get a boat across
I
the?
think that's part of the Patriot series. Actually, I can get the exact title. I'm looking. Let me take a look at my bookshelf here.
Yeah, so that scared the crap out of me when I read that book, and I had either was just about to go or had just rotated back from Afghanistan. And I really took a look at what I had and how I was flagging myself, so to speak. So one of the jokes online, if you guys don't know it, is if you break into a flat dark earth Toyota Tacoma, you can steal the Glock 19 inside. So try not to be too obvious about what you're doing. Um, and you're going to buy a little bit at a time. Like every time I go to the grocery store, I might buy, like, I like corned beef hash. So I'll buy a couple extra corned beef hash, and that stuff gets rotated through pretty quick. So things like that to think about as well.
I love that, and I think that should go into the next kind of subject on this. Before we get too deep into some of the prepping stuff and the starter stuff, again, look at your water, look at the water resources, look at your travel, and how much food you can carry, and things like that. I traveled for work, and I knew anywhere I went, I was either a loot drop or I had to glam on to a community, and they had to believe that I was worthwhile enough to keep me alive. Because chances are, if there's an EMP, I'm not making it home. There was no way. Being thousands of miles across the country, and that's a hard pill to swallow. But let's talk about getting other people in. And I'm going to bring up my little quick story. My fiance got he's been kind of forced into prepping because of me. But we went out and saw a movie, and I texted Chris Weatherman right afterwards. I'm like, "What'd you think of the movie?" And he's like, "It sucks." And I know why he said that, and I agree with him. It's not the best prepping movie out in the world, but Homestead. And she turned to me afterwards, and she's a nurse. She's been on a cattle farm. She knows how to deal with livestock, which I don't have a clue on livestock. But she went, I want to be useful and valuable. I don't want to sit outside of a gate with a inability to be useful. And you, as a prepper, can either bring a lot of supplies, you could bring seeds, you could bring ammo, other stuff. But skills are something that we always forget, and this is why I bought books and I'm learning. And learning stuff for prepping also starts, you start out small. Don't go buy the 300 pounds of rice. Not that it's bad to have 300 pounds of rice, but don't go and slam everything. Go to a course. Start off and learn what you don't know. Pick areas that you may be interested in and you don't know as much. And I swear, every prepper thinks they're a gun guy until you watch, what's it, School of the American Rifle, and you watch that guy drop gauges into guns and saying, well, this is off and this is why this gun malfunctions. Most Americans who are gun nuts, replace parts, but I don't know always what's wrong, so I'll have to replace the whole bolt carrier or something like that. So that's a start. Anyone else have any stories? Let's start with Patriot Man. Did you get any of your family members, friends into it, and how did you get them prepping?
Yeah, so it's funny because what really spurred them, and so I start prepping right 2012. I go to my first class in 2018 with Scout. It was the RTO course. And then went to another one, the advanced one, in August of 2018. And then that's when I started writing for American Partisan and been to about a bajillion classes since. But even through all that time, really, my family, um, they were either, like they never thought it was like a dumb idea, but they were like, all right, that's just something he's doing. Like, they didn't understand the fragility of the system that we exist in. And so until someone understood that, they didn't always get the prepping thing. Right. So my one brother did. He was supportive from the beginning. The other ones were just kind of ambivalent to it. And that happened right up until the pandemic hit. And so the pandemic hits, and we started reporting on it in, I think our first article on it was December of 19 or the first week of 2020. And we're watching this come and become this big thing, and I'm having conversations with me and Scout and Johnny Mac and Jesse James at the time, and we're like, this is going to get bad, not necessarily because of the virus, because of the panic. So I started to text my family and said, hey, look, there's going to be some shortages coming up, and I really think you need to go out and get a bunch of this, and this week. So I told them from day one, I said, I'll try never to cry wolf but when it comes to an emergency, when I tell you to do something, I really would hope you'd listen to me because I'm watching this stuff. And so they did. And so the next week, I tell them to go out and get another set of items. And I remember getting text messages saying, hey, everything you told us to get last week, there's nothing left in the stores. And so I mean, this also takes a little bit of luck about how panicky people are. I was able to pretty well predict to my family what was going out of stock about a week or two before it actually would. And so we managed to stay ahead of most of the shortages for that. And then, the whole N95 mask, blah, blah, blah. And so now they started to say, hold up, Joe has all this stuff. Like, I remember my mom made a comment and she goes, I said something along the lines, I didn't want to say I told you so. I was trying to be nice about it. And I was kind of like, Ma, this is one of the reasons we prep. And that's why I've been doing what I'm doing. And she said, oh, nobody could have expected this. And I politely was like, well, no, that's only the reason I have 195 masks sitting in this tub that I bought 5 years ago in case of a pandemic. Like, so once they saw the reality of, okay, this is how the government's going to act, this is how people are going to act in a disaster. And when they saw how little they could trust their government, that was when the switch was just flipped on in their heads. And now I have people asking me, hey, is it, my mom's like, oh, is this good shelf stable food? I'm like, what? She's like, yeah, is Augustin Farms good? I was like, I mean, I have Augustin Farms. She goes, oh, okay. I'm going to get like a 90-day supply of this. And I'm like, who are you and what did you do with my mother? Because, like, between that and her asking me to help her pick out a handgun, I thought I had went into a different timeline. And it was all because they finally started to experience a situation where it made sense. Right? They were still in normalcy, complacent world before the pandemic, thinking, la la la, nothing's going to happen. Again, the only one who wasn't was my brother, my one brother, who is a cynical bastard like me. So that was really the key to getting them on board, and then they've been on board ever since. So it was finally seeing the utility of it. Now, of course, they're still not like me, and I told them, you focus on just the food for you guys. I'm not expecting you to run out and get a whole radio set up. I'll pull out one of my 80,000 radios, like I got you covered on that. But at least now they're focusing on like the food and the hygiene and the water that they can deal with, and I have the rest of the stuff taken care of. But otherwise, I don't think without the pandemic and the subsequent government overreach that they would have been so into prepping as they are right now.
Yeah, I think a lot of people hit these, and I saw this when I went up to North Carolina. I saw the disaster and stuff like that. Things are going back to normal for them. They're living. They're having their time. The people that survived, and not everybody died of food, but little disasters. The rationale behind all this is like, hey man, we go out there and you see these problems, you see little natural disasters, and I say little because it's not countrywide, it's not a whole nation collapsing. And the reality is, in the 1920s, when we had the economic collapse, there was people killing themselves jumping off buildings. People were migrating all over the place trying to get jobs. There wasn't enough food around, and people have forgotten that because it's not something historically relevant we talk about. But that was a whole nation hit. And when you're prepped for just little things like hurricanes, Rabbit was talking about that. The hurricanes are not that hard to survive, provided you survive the actual hurricane. The after effects is like, hey, can I cook the food that I have? Like, I got a Kelly kettle because you can boil water anywhere. You can hydrate stuff. You can cook on top of it. I think it's a nice little product. It's not something I'm going to take out into a combat zone, although they have been taken. Apparently, somebody in Ukraine had one. They're all these little augments, all these little things are just small things you can do over time. And I think a lot of preppers, especially the community that we're talking to, we're definitely talking to the American partisans, the Contras, the anti communist people that are worried about that stuff. They're going to go a little heavier into the weapons. But the reality is, North Carolina, there was shootings, there was other problems, there's people getting stressed over not having immediate resources, and just having that water and that food and being able to conceal the point to most people, hey, I don't have all this stuff, don't turn me into a loot shop, is also important too, which I think is very very important. Is kind of like, hey, how much camo stuff do you want to carry, how much civilian stuff should I be wearing, should it be Carhartts instead of BDUs? That's an important conversation to have and something to think about too. Mando, you had any kind of things like that go on? Brought anybody into
Yeah,
the?
my dad got into it right away with me when because he lost his job during the financial crisis, and then we kind of got into it together. And my sister came on board because she saw what was going on too, and we had a decent setup going. And then my dad got sick, and then he died. So I kind of had to start over, which was good. Is cleansing it away, and you kind of can go through some of the stuff that you've got that's excessive. And with my sister, it's a little harder because she's into the fitness kind of side of it and the food prep and like the cold weather prep, but not as much into the guns, which actually is kind of a nice balance because then I kind of handle that. And because of course, she's got a couple of guns, and she always carries every day, but she's just not into the shooting stuff like I am. And so it's been, and one of the things I told my significant other when we were going to get married was, this is serious. You have to take this serious. And if you're not willing to take this serious, this isn't going to work. And she said, okay, well, I want a commitment. And so I committed to her, and it's been really good because now we've talked about, she's like, one day she walked up to me, she said, I think we should get a generator. I was like, okay, I'll start working on saving the money up to make sure we got a generator. And that's something that Joe Dolio talks about quite a bit. So we've got a solar one, and I've been looking for one of those little Honda quiet generators so that we've got, be able to run the freezer in the summer, and just enough to power our radios off the solar one. So it's been good. I would say that where I am now, the winters definitely keep people prepped in a way. You see people walking around right now in camouflage stuff all the time because most of the guys, 600,000 gun hunters in Wisconsin, they got camo clothing that keeps them warm. So it's nothing to go to a restaurant and go to the grocery store and guys are wearing their camo jackets. Would I wear that into, say, Chicago, Minneapolis? Probably not. Des Moines, yeah, but those other ones maybe not as likely. And one of the things that I've done too is I actually had a lot of time standing in front of a machine where I used to work, and I actually wrote layered lists of like, okay, this is what I want to have on my person. This is my bare minimum. This is what I would want to have on, say, my belt. 'Cause I've got a battle belt. This is what I would want to have on my everyday bag, and then layer it in. And I've got a really good, basically just my clothes, but you can't tell what I've got. Extra knives, tools, zip tie, handcuffs, stuff like that. You don't even know I've got it on me. Most guys don't even know that I've got sometimes two guns on me. So it's one of those things where I'm trying to make sure that I can blend in with everybody wherever I'm at. And if I'm wearing a camo jacket today and plaid one tomorrow, it works either way.
I think lists are a big thing. I really want to dig deeper into that. And everybody's list is going to be a little bit different. Dolio talks about it in his books. I think TW01 and O2 kind of go into a lot of that prepping on layers. And I think that's something that a lot of people, when you first start out, you don't really think about. You're like, hey, I need food, supplies, and everything else. And there is a difference between a prepper's bag, go bag, which is going to be heavier, and somebody who's a partisan, who's a contra, which was going to be a lighter bag, but they're starting at a base position. So there may be two lists and only one bag. You may only have one bag. And maybe that bag's 75, 80 pounds. When you get home, you take out a whole bunch of stuff and you use the same bag. Rabbit, did you bring anybody into prepping that you know?
Yeah, I got a couple that in reality, I know you helped bring me into it, and our friendship kind of helped that out, and that's definitely bled over into even my family and similar. Um, like Patriot Man said, like kind of, I'm not a black sheep in my family, but I am that guy. Like I am, I do kind of take on that label of like, hey, like you'd bring up some of the current information of like during COVID, hey, I think something is kind of happening. During COVID, me and my wife were up in New York visiting some family, and when all the shelves were emptying, we weren't near our home. We were even threatened to not be able to get back to our house because of all the airports shutting down and the airlines and everything else. It literally happened the day after we returned back that everything did that. The big shutdown happened. And so we didn't have anything but what we already had in the house. And that kind of got my wife into it. She started to see, oh, wow, like, yeah, I know this is a big pile of junk that at the time and even now is still a little unorganized, but um, it helped us. We maintained a quality of life that we probably wouldn't have had if I didn't grab all that extra crap. And at the time, it was lower quality. I still was on the idea of, hey, I can take on the world. I'm a solo prepper, like, you and me against the world type ideas. And I hadn't fully accepted that community involvement and seen myself and learned from those who were around me, not just skills, but actually the friendship and the knowledge of, like Patreon members say, and Amanda, you were saying, hey, just trading gear back and forth. I started my class with a front back plates and a plate carrier walking up those hills at the G camp, died in like 4 hours, stripped all that stuff off under everyone else's guidance, and was like, hey, nope, you got to get lighter. This is not going to work for you. You know, my endurance hadn't been able to change. But between her and now, I've kind of taken, obviously, with my medical background, I've a little bit more attuned towards like the pharmaceuticals, and my wife has taken the holistic medicine side. Even now, like she's got a whole bunch of stuff in the basement right now. We grew everything this year except for a handful of herbs, and she's really wholesale committed to this. And we've seen a lot of positive, even within her own immune system and her lifestyle with that. And then, actually, of last week, my father called me, who has always been kind of, you know, he receives me, but still kind of a arm length of, hey, you're maybe a little crazy, but and that's okay, I guess. But he was like, hey, those rapid radios that we were speaking of that last time, he actually brought those up to me. Was like, hey, I want to be able to talk to you guys. Is this something that actually might fit this bill? And although we know our opinions on them and everything has their place, and I disagreed, but I was very, gave me a lot of warm and fuzzies to be like, you know what, Dad? Yeah, let's have this conversation. We broke the ice, and let's start getting back into the team of, do you starting to see what I'm talking about? It's not, I don't care if I'm right or wrong. I just want to be alive and healthy at the end of it. I want my friends and my family to be alive and happy at the end of it. Talk about like, I don't want to get too deep into like weird. I stockpile soap. I stockpile all that preventative medicine that we'll be talking about that in a later article too. And to me, I get to now share that with my community. And I think that's where, and teaching those two people and you bringing me into the fold as well is just, and then obviously you guys, Mando and Patriot Man. I mean, I was so skeptical of the community, and so it's the community that I think is really a good part here. So
That's a big thing. And I watched, whether you like people or not, and there's always going to be good and bad. And there's people out there that are what I'd call on the shady side. Not shady side, would be a better term. Not pure altruists, but people who are trying to help the community but may have a rougher background or something like that. Some of these people are driving people to join communities. And I know Clay Martin has tried to drive a community on Discord. I think they shut it down for whatever reason. And I think there's PNW Gorillas out there, and he's like, join a community, get involved. And I know like that guy sells surplus gear, which is fine. No shade on that at all. I think that's a great thing. Do your hobby, and if you can make it a job too and make money, awesome. But a lot of people online love to come out and say, "Oh, I want to join a group," but they never want to get together, and that's a hard thing. Rabbit's far away from me. I travel all over the U.S. for work, and sometimes I'm nearby, sometimes I'm not. And I've got friends now. I've got prepper friends all over the country now. I got some in Arkansas. I've got some in Oklahoma. I've got some in Utah, etc. And you meet these people and you get to know them, and you have a sheltering place to go to. I've had several guys like, hey, just bring whatever you can out of your car and make it to my place, and we'll try to make sure there's food and shelter and whatever we can do for you. And that's important. And I think that's what these classes do. Go to the class locally near you. I know Dolio's got Montana going on. Patriot Man, do you know any classes that just like pop out? I know what's the K studies. I know he's doing a class.
Yeah, the K classes will pop up sometimes if he can fit them in. If he's already going to be in the area, he'll try to tag along on a before or after maybe a set of scouts courses. I know that mech medics, partisan lifesaver courses, and TCCC um, are a little bit more of a pop up than laid out. I mean, I think he has one scheduled now, but sometimes he'll have an opening up in his schedule and say, "Hey, I can actually throw a class in here," and so those pop up as well. Those are the two off the top of my head.
But regardless, and unfortunately we don't have like specifics, so I'll have to look that up, and I'll probably do that in the next podcast like I did previously. Go to these classes. These classes are where you find community, and sometimes it's not somebody nearby. Maybe when I went to the Missouri one, there's a whole bunch of guys from Missouri, but I also know there's some guys from Oklahoma coming in and other things like that. And they really, the bonding, meet people. And some of these guys you may not like. Other guys you'll love. Patriot Man, love the dude. I don't see you enough. I know you're way up in New Jersey area region.
Yeah.
And I know you come down for the classes, but sometimes I can't. I know the next scout course I'd love to be off for, but I'm going to be down for historian's class, for his HF class, to
Mm-hmm.
assist him and to learn. You just meet amazing people there, and they have diverse backgrounds and diverse interests in this whole prepping community too, and they have the knowledge you don't have. One of the things like Clay Martin really hammers down, and I think Dolio does too, a pretty good job, is have a diverse amount of people in your community. Mando's my gun guy. If I got a gun question, I'm going to Mando. If I have a medical question, it's either my fiance or it's Rabbit right off the top of my head. And I think, honestly, Patriot Man, I'll probably hit you up a little more about, like, what did you prep or what do you have around, just because you know that stuff. And it's building that community, that bonding, that really helps us.
I 100% agree. I mean, I always joke that I've had everyone tells me, if something bad happens and I ever have to get out of New Jersey, I think I have offers from like people in like 25 different states of like, yo, just make it here and don't worry about it. We'll figure it out from there. I know I got the entire Eastern Seaboard covered. twice over, I think. So exactly, you have that community that gets built up, the guys that you can chat with and exchange information with. For me, the big groups that get the guys on here, obviously, just a bunch of people in North Carolina, some people in Georgia, people in Pennsylvania. Those are the big clusters that I have, and then I have literally a smattering of others in Virginia and New Hampshire, in Connecticut, in New York. No one in Delaware, but they're tiny, so they don't really count. Florida, I know I have a good group down there. So just exactly, you find yourself in this area, Chicago. We got our favorite Malort drinking boys out in
Oh
Chicago,
my god, I can't believe you brought
and
that garbage up.
Yeah, man.
The gypsy
yeah,
curse.
but exactly that. I know that if I'm whatever reason I'm on a work trip, I'm going to a conference, and I am in Chicago O'Hare, and shit goes south. I know that there's someone in that area. Hey, can you get me an exfil?
Got you,
And then
brother.
I'll figure it out from there. And maybe that's simply them coming to grab you out of the airport, and you go back to their place, and then you're like, all right, you know what? Based on right now, there's a car rental place nearby. I can just rent a car one way and make it home. But they got you out of the city, and maybe
You end up in
they're like,
Chicago. I
hey,
got 4 cars. You can take one of mine.
yeah, there you go, perfect. So it's just, but exactly that, and you do learn from these people. I mean, I think some of the articles that both Gorilla and Rabbit have written. Uh, those are the kinds of articles I think people need to read, and I'm right there with you, Rabbit, with the soap and I got all that in a tub just to that stuff for exactly the same reason that you're saying. Because that's the other thing that kind of came out of that was people like all the shiny gear and gun stuff, but when you tell them they got to stock like soap, they're like, I don't really want to. Like, hey, maybe we're gonna be eating like this not so tasteful food. Maybe you want to get like a bunch of those big like 3 gallon things of like onion powder and garlic powder. No, but yeah, but I could get this gun instead. And you're like, well, you could. It'd be like the 19th one you have of that
I
caliber.
was just
But
about to
Yeah,
say that.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
that I mean, there's that too. But yeah, I would 100% agree that getting out and meeting people and just learning, and you're going to learn from these people. They all have expertise, and you'd be shocked at who comes through these classes. I mean, some of the dudes with the coolest backstories, and then you have the random Joe Schmo civvies like me, right? Like I was sitting in a course where we had a bunch of the cool, like two cool guy Air Force guys, a cool guy Marine. We had a dentist. We had a guy who was an electrical engineer, and then it was like me, and it's like, yeah, hi, I'm a civilian, but it was amazing conversation because everyone had their own perspectives about looking at a problem, and
Civilians
that's
have
what
a
made it work. And sometimes you wanted the really highly technical, oh, well, what about this? And then the other one would be me just being like, well, what about this? And then you're like, oh, those two things come together, and now we solve the problem.
yeah.
So
I think
there's
civilians.
no
Oh,
substitute for getting into meat space and training. There just isn't. You can read all the books, you can watch all the videos, but until you're testing your gear in the field and you're going out and meeting these people, it's just not the same.
yeah, I agree, and I'd like to add to that. I think civilians get a bad rap in this community sometimes, and we go straight for trainers who are military. There is a case study for that and a purpose for that, and I believe that's in specific things. If you're going for specific knowledge patterns, you need that. But maybe the civilian gunsmith is going to teach you more than the armorer from the military who's just told to replace parts. This isn't always true. This isn't always valid. But recognize that even your civilian people are going to see things differently. They're going to look at you and go, why are you wearing all that crazy camo and you're in Washington, D.C.? You look stupid. And then you go, oh, yeah, it's prior military. I got all this crap. Maybe it's time to change that. And that's why I think civilians are so important. You forget sometimes the civilian who's been doing other work is as smart or maybe smarter than you in certain areas. That's very important, and that's what comes to these classes. It's not just military cool guys, and you'll learn a lot from them. But it's guys like Patriot Man. It's people like Teddy Bear, who has a great podcast that I'm going to re-say. Hey, go listen to him. If you are a medical nerd, that's where you want to go. And having that diversity helps so much. And I promise you, it's just like all this stuff ends up being kind of like a church too. When you go and you get into a church and you start finding that community, you find the right church, the right prepping group, whatever, you go, wow, this really clicks with me. Oh, now I understand why people believe in the Bible, why people believe this and that. And I'm not saying you have to be a prepper, but you'll see why these communities build, and they go, hey, this community really helps you a whole bunch.
One thing I want to say on the prep side is your gut is really important. I don't know if a lot of people consider that very often, but my gut feeling has saved me a bunch of times. I remember one time we were driving snowy roads. All of a sudden, whoever was driving was just like, slow down, slow down, slow down, slow down, slow down. Deer jumped right out in front of us, right where we would have been. I think I've told the story maybe on here. I don't remember. And one of the other times was pre-COVID. This really weird feeling. I was like, I gotta have my go bag is not right. So I went through and spent some money getting the gear that I did need because I think I'd just gone through brush feeders training because he had actually come up to Wisconsin, and I actually got my go bag together. And then, yeah, I had some life things happen, and then COVID hit. One of the other things too is like Patriot Man was talking about was that being on the forefront of stuff and knowing to get things. My wife, fiance at the time, we were in Florida when that all started, and my sisters called me freaking out. Oh my gosh, there's no toilet paper, there's no this, there's no that. Well, luckily I had gone and I had seen the writing on the wall, and I had, stacked toilet paper and all that crazy stuff that people ran out of, and we had food, and like I said, there was, the dog food and things like that. So listen to your gut. Your gut has there's some sixth sense that your gut tells you, man, I've been using it even more lately. I just walked outside like expecting something, and all of a sudden, boom, there it was. It was just weird feeling. So listen to that inner voice. If something doesn't feel right, or if you think I want to buy this, and then you've got that pre-buyer's remorse, not the after, but like, right, I'm not sure if I should pick this up right now. Don't walk away from it. Think about something else. Sleep on it. Wait till the next paycheck, whatever.
I'll add to
That
that.
that'll do you. Go ahead.
I want to add, I hate to cut you off. I know Patriot Man's going to go, and I think you're right. But if you don't have that gut instinct, find a Patriot Man. I've used Rabbit all the time. Rabbit, I'm like, introduce people to. I'm like, hey, is this a good dude? Because I don't have that sixth sense. Are you a good dude or not? So, anyways, I hate to cut it short. I know Patriot Man's got things to do. He's got a life. And we will be probably coming back to this subject a little more some other time. Thank you so much for coming on, Patriot Man. Thank you for everybody who is involved in this process and just being here and helping the common man out. Patriot Man, any last words?
I was gonna say, get out and train. Find yourself a good group of dudes like you have here. And the most important thing, I think, Mando, you hit it right. Trust your gut, and don't get complacent. Now that quote unquote, our guys back in the office, I saw it happen in 2016, and a lot of people could have made a lot of progress, and they didn't in their prepping journey
Off the
because
slump.
they took their foot off the gas. So don't do that. Keep going. We know that he's not the end all be all savior. Right now, he's just buying us some more time. So keep that in the back of your heads. And yeah, thanks for having me on.
Mando, anything else?
Don't be a loot drop. Keep your shovel sharp.
Rabbit, anything else for you?
Man, I can't top that. How the hell am I supposed to top that? But yeah, no, I appreciate you having me on. Yeah, always definitely take classes when you can, and sometimes they're expensive, but as we've said before, it
They're
may not
worth
even
it.
be the class. It
Yep.
might be it might be the campfire and the talks afterwards that really you get to learn. So
Amen.
All right.
be
Thank you,
involved.
guys. I appreciate it.
All right.
Don't be a loot chop. Keep that shovel sharp. Good night.